I don't see myself leading some kind of revolution that results in this perfect state where everyone's needs are provided for and there's perfect equality. I don't think that exists.
Yeah, well then you'd make for a lousy revolution, because if you're going to bother imposing a violent revolution, then god damn it, you better have some high ideals. You better have a goddamn plan for the people. I mean, that's just so ludicrous. I mean, there are fucking solutions. There are mechanisms that can be created to make the system fair. I'll say it 5,000 times, and I'd love to hear you argue against it. Life is a game. The systems we create are the rules of the game, like a baseball game. Okay, the game is a lot more complicated than a baseball game. The rules have to be structured and balanced and have to be articulate and intelligently designed to make for a good game. Alright, but it can be done. I mean, baseball can go on for hundreds of years with the rules it has. You play the game over and over by the same rules. It makes sense to people. It seems fair. Okay, you're trying to create a fair contest. That's all it's about. And we can do that to our systems. We can make them fair. But that has to be the ambition. If all you're seeing is some, arbitrary and ambiguous and almost silly notion of absolute freedom, well, guess what? That's not consistent with a game that has structure and rules. So fuck that. That's not going to work. So you have to bend your stupid brain a little bit, all right, and try to define fairness, not just freedom.
Best we can hope for is another imperfect state that lasts for a few hundred years and then becomes corrupt and needs to, in turn, be overthrown. I don't think you can build I don't think you can structure a perfect society because people aren't perfect.
Yeah, well, so what? Exactly. People cheat, people do this, people do that. The same can apply to a game. Any game, people are going to want to cheat. So you make rules to avoid the cheating. You make rules to discipline against the imperfections. I would concede that you're not going to be able to create a world where you can have 6.5 billion people of diverse need, want, desire, disposition, temperament, sensibility. Okay, that's impossible unless you do something like virtual reality where everybody can be a glutton and a pig and it doesn't matter. But in the real world, people are going to have to be satisfied not all being king. And if that isn't possible, if human beings are just too egotistical and self-obsessed to think that they're all not entitled to be billionaires or something, well, yeah, then there's going to be some disappointment if you're going to create a real world for them to live in, because reality is not going to provide the hierarchy they desire.
I don't plan on leading a revolt, Chris, but I'm what you claim does not exist, a man willing to join one. Sooner or later, it must happen because the alternative is unthinkable. Perfect, eternal slavery. That's what I believe.
Yeah, well, whatever. What does that mean? Okay, I mean, you're going to join Timothy McVeigh's revolution? He had a revolution. He went to his breaking point. So you're going to defend what he did? Are you just going to defend the idea, well, yeah, you broke, so you killed some people, you put a government label on them, and you blew them up, even if they were in diapers. You just put the government label on them, blow them up. Is that the game? And everybody gets to make that decision? Just go based on, well, I'm fed up. I fucked up. I lost at the game. Yeah, it's a capitalist, harsh, brutal system. I can't play it right. I lose, so I'm going to, blow some shit up. That's the human, rational, intelligent response?
I think a stable world government would be the worst thing to ever happen to mankind. If we ever achieve a stable empire that doesn't topple with time, man, we're going to be so fucked.
Yeah, right. So if we eventually get it right, we create a real constitution that is articulate and explicit, that protects every reasonable freedom desired, and almost perfects the Jeffersonian notion of every liberty you could exercise that doesn't impose or restrict the liberty of somebody else. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. I mean, that taken to some ideal, rational level. Yeah, that would be just a horror, wouldn't it? Just an absolute horror that we would finally find rules that work and we'd be able to play a fair game. I mean, that would be just horrible.
I don't think I'm going to convince you of my way of thinking on this, Chris, but I just don't want you to see me as this this rabble-rouser that's just got his finger on the trigger, itching for violence.
Well, it's your own rhetoric that creates that illusion, if that's what you're thinking it is. I mean, you brought the subject up, okay? You did. You defended the scenario that we need our guns to create our revolution, because it's inevitable, because it happens every 300 years, or every 200 years, or every 47.5 years. We have to shake it up, or we have to blow it up, or some other bullshit scenario. You brought all that crap up, all right? So now don't sit there and say, well, that's not what I'm saying. What the fuck are you saying?
The question, as I see it, isn't what alternative to a revolt is there. The question is, how bad are we going to let things get?
Yeah, well, what is that crap anyway? How bad are things? I mean, realistically, how bad are things? I mean, it's, how many of the people in prison are in prison for their political speech? How many people has the government murdered? I mean, what's the percentage per capita? And you're telling me that no other people in the history of mankind have tolerated such oppression without resorting to violence? I mean, this is ludicrous bullshit. I mean, it insults all the people who did it the hard way, that marched to the ocean to make a point, who put their life at risk, who burned themselves with gasoline in the fucking street before they resorted to picking up a weapon and killing someone else. I mean, fuck you. I mean, you haven't earned a revolution yet.
This video, which is, if you don't agree with me that the time is now, then what would need to happen to make you feel that way? I mean, I don't know what it is. I think everybody has a breaking point. I think if I were to kid...
Yeah, well, look, I guess the breaking point would be is if there was a clear majority of people, 60%, whatever the number was, who actually agreed, who actually could coalesce on the notion that they are slaves and they have been robbed of their dignity and freedom, well, maybe then it's time to act. But you wouldn't need violence to act, because you would have the masses, you would have the power of the people. All right, the tyrants have nothing if they don't have the people to suck their blood. And so if we just refuse to allow our blood to be sucked, they are going to compromise. They are going to make deals, because they will know there's no winning then. If they have nothing to exploit, they have nothing.
Revolution isn't about organizing cities. That's a civil war. There's a difference between a civil war and a revolt. A revolution isn't about organizing some city into an army. It's about the city burning itself to pieces. It's self-destruction. It's where we pull the house down on top of us. I think every state...
Well, that's just brilliant. Yeah, so that's your answer. So go from 50% to 0. Or from 0 to negative 500. What sense does that make? Blowing stuff up, destroying what you have, that's an idiot's solution. Burning, I mean, that's, the nose things, cutting your nose off to spite your face kind of bullshit. That's an idiot's logic.
Every government is like an organism. It's like a creature that's born, matures, and dies. And then a new one is born phoenix-like out of the ashes.
I mean, what, that's the rule? It's stupid. Like I said, we're on a progressive scale. There's nuclear weapons. Rome's not going to fall anymore. That kind of shit can't happen anymore. All right, there's there's changes that make it impractical, if not impossible, improbable, if not impossible. I mean, it's a game you can't even contemplate it rationally, because there's no way you can say, okay, in chaos, what happens to 3,000 nuclear weapons? What kinds of lunatics get their hands on those weapons? I mean, come on.